Welcome back to Daily Connections. If you're living in the U.S. as an immigrant or a visitor, navigating the laws of your state can be quite challenging. So, here with tips on making your time here in America a success is immigration attorney Lebיא with the law firm פיינר and Lebיא. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure having you. There's a lot of language, a lot of technicalities, and I know one of the first things that people sometimes get caught up on is the difference between a green card and a visa. Can you explain that for me?
Sure. Green card is the right to stay in the United States permanently. So once you have it, you can permanently reside in the United States, work, and file petition for your relatives. Eventually, in most of the cases, that can lead to you becoming a U.S. citizen.
Okay.
Now, visa is the right to stay in the United States temporary. Most of the cases you apply, actually in all of the cases, you have to go to the U.S. consulate in your home country and apply for a visa.
Okay.
Depending of your intention, what do you want to do in the United States?
To visit.
Exactly, why you're coming. So if you're coming for work, or if you're coming for business, so if you're coming as a student or tourist, that's gonna, you're gonna get issued a visa according to that.
And they have a time limit on them, correct?
Most of the cases,
Most of the cases they do. Okay. What are the biggest mistakes that immigrants purposefully or inadvertently may make when they enter the U.S.?
Okay, the first thing, when you're coming to the United States, you have a meeting, or you're gonna see the immigration officer at the border. So I wouldn't recommend people, to lie to this immigration officer, because if he catch you lying, there is what is called summary removal proceedings, and you might be removed for 5 years. Your visa can be canceled.
And it seems so obvious, but I know that people do it all the time. And I think sometimes it's even out of nervousness, the pressure or something. But don't lie, tell the truth, because you don't want to get caught later on.
Exactly. Now, the second thing, don't overstay your status. So if you came with a tourist visa and you got up to 6 months, don't overstay. Once you overstay by 1 day, your visa is void, and you're losing your rights to extend or change your status to another status. So let's say after 5 months you find a school that you want to join. And
your visa was only good for 6 months.
Exactly. So you have to file for your change of status on time. We normally recommend to do it 45 days beforehand.
To give yourself some extra room, because once that visa expires, you're then an illegal immigrant, correct?
Exactly.
Okay, so that's something to keep in mind. I know you also talk about entering illegally to begin with as something that you don't recommend doing.
No, never.
Because once you get here, you don't really have the rights or the opportunity to move from that status, correct?
Exactly. When you enter legally, you're losing a lot of rights, and one of the rights is to adjust your status. This is a process when you try to convert yourself from one status to a green card, becoming a permanent resident. And even if you married an American citizen, you won't be able to do that if you entered illegally.
So do it by the book.
Exactly.
If I have relatives from abroad that want to travel here to visit me, what should they do? What are the steps you would take them through?
Okay, the first thing I would check with the U.S. consulate at their home country on whether their country is part of the visa waiver program.
Now, what is the visa waiver program?
Okay, the visa waiver program, it's a program of the Department of State, which allows certain countries, which allows people from certain countries to enter the United States without a visa.
Without needing a visa. And I've run into that myself in travels, going to different countries. I know that, for example, Argentina didn't require a visa when I traveled there, but Brazil did. So there's different countries, so check with your own consulate and find out what the requirements are and what the relationship is between your country and the U.S.
Exactly. Now, if your country is part of the visa waiver program, so you don't need a visa, you don't need to spend time, money, and to go through the bureaucracy of the U.S. consulate in your home country, and just come here without a visa.
Now, are you still limited, though, on how long you can stay in the U.S.?
Yes. When you come in with the visa waiver program, without a visa, so your entry is limited to 90 days normally, And another issue is that you're also waiving your rights. And you're waiving your rights to extend your status or change it to another
So
status.
at the end of those 90 days, if you've gone through the visa waiver program and you decide you'd like to extend your stay, you don't have that option. You're going to
Exactly.
have to leave the country and then attempt to return
Exactly.
in order to stay longer than, or in order to be here longer than just that amount of time that you could be here. Whereas if you got the visa, you could 45 days before it expires, you were saying,
Exactly.
apply, correct?
Yes. Now many people come here, they get, with a visa waiver, and they can travel to Canada, for example, for a few days, a few weeks, and then
come back
re-enter and get another 90 days.
Interesting. I'd like to talk a little bit about people staying through sponsorship. I've heard about that before. I've had a friend who talked about that possibility. Can you talk about those people who are employers and sponsorships are available?
Sure.
Explain that to me.
Sponsorship, a U.S. employer or company can file visa application and sponsor foreign employees either on a visa or for a green card. Normally you start with a visa for 3 years or 2 years, and within this process you can apply for a green card also. Many people, what they do, you file for, let's say, an H-1B visa, which is visa for a specialty occupation if you're an accountant or a lawyer or in the IT business. You come here on H-1B visa. It allows you to stay up to 3 years, and you can extend it for another 3 years. And in parallel, you can apply for a green card.
Oh my, but you've got to keep your eye on all of that and make sure that you've got
Exactly.
your paperwork together, but that does give you that option. Now, other than a work sponsorship, are there other sponsorships, like private sponsorships or family ones?
Yeah, there are family. A U.S. citizen can, or a permanent resident can file petitions for his relatives.
Okay.
And there is also self-sponsorship. For example, if you invest in the United States, if you invest $1 million or more in a business, you have to employ also more than 10 employees.
U.S. employees.
Yeah, you might be eligible
interesting.
for a green card. Yeah.
Interesting, very interesting. Now, I understand that there are some laws that work in favor of immigrants concerning their stay in America that help to protect them if they find themselves in a jam or in a questionable situation. Starting with the workplace. What if I begin and I've got a job and a visa to be able to work as an accountant, and then suddenly my employer threatens to take my job away? What can happen there?
Okay, there are two things I would like to emphasize. First of all, in most of the cases, people can port from one employer to another. So let's say you're working for employer A, and you're not satisfied, he's not satisfied, the company is closing down, you can port to another employer.
And you say port? Does that mean
transfer? Yeah, it's a legal word.
Okay.
So you can transfer. You can transfer.
You'll know these legal words. That's why you're here to explain. But yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so you can go to one workplace to another.
You need the second employer to file a new petition for you.
Okay.
So, send the appropriate forms to the United States government, to the immigration, and tell them, look, I want to transfer this person.
Does it have to be within the same field? Like I gave the example, accountant.
Not necessarily.
Does the second one have to be an accounting job?
Not necessarily, but
No.
it depends on the visa. If it's an H-1 visa, it must be in specialty occupation.
Okay.
Doesn't necessarily have to be in the same field.
Interesting.
Now, one more thing I would like to say is that even if you're in the process of getting a green card through your employer, you also have the ability to transfer yourself.
That's reassuring to know.
Yeah.
To not have to stay in a difficult situation
Exactly.
because of the process. How about if we get a little bit more personal? What if we have a woman who is in an unstable situation at home, and she's found that her husband or perhaps a partner is saying, I'll get you deported if you leave me. Does she have any leg to stand on?
Sure. I mean, if you're talking about people, spouses that are married to American citizens, I mean, it happens a lot that American citizen or permanent resident try to take advantage. They tell you, look, if you don't do that, I'm going to call the immigration. If you don't do that, I'm going to call the police. And people,